On New Year's Eve, Augustine and a group of friends came up with a new game. They would pretend to be bankrupt for half a month and see how their lovers would treat them. They understood that anyone who could truly stay by their side was no ordinary person and wouldn't be easily fooled. So, to make the act convincing, they planned an elaborate setup together. They used the simplest method to decide who would be bankrupt. They placed a bottle on the ground and spun it hard. The bottle's mouth pointed straight at Augustine. Yet the man who had been brimming with confidence ended up suffering a loss at the hands of the person he trusted most. On New Year's Eve, Augustine wandered the streets and made a phone call. "Grace, I don't have a home anymore. Can you take me in for a bit?" Chapter 1. When I received the call, the last dish of the New Year's Eve dinner had just been placed on the table. Although there were only Anna and me in the small house, this year's New Year's Eve meal was still lavish. Anna was holding my phone, fiddling with something I didn't know. But just as I was about to call her to eat, she ran excitedly toward me. "Mom, Dad says he has no money and wants to eat. Can we let him come over?" "No money?" I originally thought it was some scam call and was about to take the phone and hang up. But then I saw the name on the screen. Augustine, someone who had disappeared from my life for a long time, and also my current husband. Our family's elders had once been close friends. When something happened to my parents and most of our family assets were swallowed up by uncles and relatives, I married him. But in truth, I was nothing more than a tool used to please his parents. Only when Augustine had to return to the old family estate thousands of miles away to see his parents were we a couple. At all other times, he was with his true love, Monica. I didn't mind playing along with him. Enduring a few days of disgust was enough to earn an appearance fee sufficient for Anna and me to live on for half a year. From a purely rational standpoint, this really was one of the best jobs in the world. For a man as wealthy as Augustine to say he had no money, there were only two possibilities. First, he was deliberately trying to embarrass me to please Monica. Second, he had gone bankrupt. Given what I knew about him, I firmly believed it was the first option. I didn't want him to come, especially on such an important day. But just as I was about to refuse, I lowered my head and met Anna's eyes. She wanted to see her father. She was too young to understand the so-called love and hatred between adults. All she knew was that the last time she had seen her father had been a fleeting encounter at a family banquet half a year ago. Unlike me, Anna liked her father very much. Her memories of him were still frozen in those joyful moments at the amusement park, in the dazzling beauty of summer night fireworks. The person on the phone didn't speak, remaining silent the entire time. A prank. Then, even if I had to endure some embarrassment, at least there would be money to send Anna to a better school. "You can come over. We're at Rose Garden right now. When you arrive, just go straight up to the 3rd floor." It seemed that a sudden screech of heartbreaking came from the other end of the phone line, and Augustine's confusion felt as though it had passed through the screen and arrived right in front of me. He mentioned a place name I had only ever heard of, a high-end residential complex nearly half a city away from where I was. I let out a self-mocking smile. How could someone like me deserve to live in a place like that? "I won't wait for you. If you want to eat, walk faster yourself." Chapter 2. Augustine knocked on my door in the final seconds of the countdown. Even though he had changed into cheap clothes that crackled with static electricity whenever he lifted an arm, it still couldn't hide that nauseating arrogance that came from being in a position of power for far too long. The moment he stepped inside, he instinctively frowned. "How can you let Anna live in a place like this?" Still that same overbearing, high and mighty tone. When I left that home back then, I had nothing to my name, nothing but a daughter who couldn't live without me. To keep the two of us alive, I humbled myself and searched for countless jobs. At the beginning, I could only do part-time work, saving bit by bit. In those days, I cried every night with Anna on my back. I couldn't understand it then. Grace, who had grown up surrounded by luxury until the age of 25. Why on her 26th birthday did she have to lower her head and beg others for a job that paid only 100 yuan for an entire night of exhausting work? Later, relying on what little I had accumulated before marrying Augustine, I wrote manuscript after manuscript, almost like a headless fly, writing endlessly, being rejected endlessly, and continuing endlessly. Eventually, our life improved a little. And only then did I have the ability to bring Anna to live in this house, one that Augustine saw as both shabby and small. And throughout all that time, Augustine never even spared me a single ounce of charity. I bent down and tied a red scarf around Anna's neck, coaxing her into the bedroom to sleep. Just as I was about to lose my temper, her little head popped out again. Daddy has to spend the new year with Anna tomorrow too. After finally getting Anna to fall asleep, the smile on my face instantly vanished. I tossed the chipped bowls and chopsticks in front of Augustine. On the table were leftovers that had already gone cold. A place like this? Young Master Cruz. This is already the best life I can give Anna. Unlike some people who usually walk around with their noses in the air. But when they fall on hard times, they can't even afford a proper meal. Hearing the sharp edge in my words, Augustine Cruz instinctively wanted to retort. But the next second, he seemed to remember his current status, that he was nothing more than a bankrupt drifter. No longer the once glorious President Cruz. Awkwardly, he picked up the bowls and chopsticks in front of him and ate the dishes in silence with a bowl of warm rice. Halfway through the meal, he finally spoke. That's not what I meant just now. I just don't understand why you'd leave the apartment at Platinum Diamond Heights empty and insist on living in such an old, tiny place. I lifted my head and studied the man in front of me. His expression didn't seem fake. An apartment? What apartment? If there really had been a place to live, Anna and I wouldn't have been kicked out of the Cruz family that night and forced to knock on the shelter's door at midnight just to keep from freezing to death. We stayed at the shelter for several days, and only after I sold the last 2 pieces of jewelry my parents had left me, the ones I had hidden away, did I finally have the courage to leave that place. Augustine's brows knitted tightly together, as if he couldn't quite understand what I was saying. Didn't you say you wanted to leave back then? And when you left, I had Monica transfer $50 million to your card for living expenses. I also told her to put the Platinum apartment under your name. Hearing that, I flatly denied it. Augustine, don't think you can go around biting people like a mad dog just because you've run out of money. If you can investigate it, then go ahead and investigate. If you find that I took any of what you mentioned, may I die a horrible death. Augustine stared at me in silence. I said nothing more. Only when the fireworks exploded outside the window did it feel, faintly, like the two of us back then, always sulking and stubborn in our own way. Chapter 3. He and I had once been the kind of childhood sweethearts you hear about in stories. Our family's grandparents had been old friends who went out into the world together to make their fortunes. That relationship carried on through our parents' generation as well, close family friends. By the time it reached my generation, my family had already begun to decline. Our influence was scattered, and the Cruz family was also in crisis, unable to offer my family much help. At that point, the only thing maintaining the connection with the Cruz family was my parents. It was during that time that I met Augustine. Augustine's parents liked me very much, and my own parents were happy to see that. So during that period, while the adults struggled outside, I followed Augustine around every single day. Back then, he saw me as his favorite little sister. He would use what little New Year's money he had to buy me candy. He would risk getting hurt just to chase away the people who bullied me. He would personally make small trinkets, worthless things, really, cutting his hands full of wounds in the process. Until the day my parents died in an accident. When I was facing those uncles who were like hyenas circling for flesh, he stood in front of me and said I was his wife, and that bullying me was an insult to the Cruz family. At that moment, I thought he must have loved me. Later, when his parents arrived, he stubbornly held my hand and stood before his uncle and aunt, silently expressing his feelings. And so, that day, a hairpin was placed in my hair. It was an heirloom of the Cruz family. It had originally been worn by his mother, until that moment when she personally removed it and let her son place it in my hair. From that day on, I officially moved into the Cruz household as Augustine's fiancé. With them protecting us, no one dared to gossip. So Augustine and I went to the same university. On graduation day, on the sports field, under everyone's gaze, that Augustine who loved me proposed to me. Those years truly felt like a boundless, beautiful dream, one you could sink into, believing you would be happy for the rest of your life. I don't know whether Augustine had other motives back then. All I know is that to the me of that time, no matter what Augustine Cruz asked of me, I would give it to him, even the 15% of Cruz Group shares that the Cruz couple gave me when I came of age. On the night before the wedding, I went to find him and said to him, Augustine, after today I'll be your bride. The Cruz shares are useless in my hands, but I know they're extremely valuable to you. After we get married, Let's transfer all of them to your name. At that time, I didn't realize that my single-minded consideration for him had disrupted the Cruz couple's plans. They had originally intended for me to hold the shares while Augustine worked his way up from the bottom, both to establish his authority and to maintain our position within the Cruz group. After I transferred the shares to Augustine, the Cruz couple quickly discovered it. They came to me and told me they would use other methods to restrain Augustine, but I persuaded them otherwise. I believed in the feelings Augustine and I had built over so many years. I refused to believe that he married me not out of love, but merely for his brilliant future. I had to admit, Augustine was a capable man. After obtaining those shares, he surged forward without resistance and successfully seized control of the Cruz group. This happened 10 years earlier than the Cruz couple had expected. Young, accomplished, and full of ambition, 10 years was more than enough time to usher in countless turbulent seasons. Large numbers of people who wanted something for nothing began to approach him. His love for me could block them once or twice, but it couldn't block them hundreds, thousands of times. Chapter 4. On the day Anna was born, I found out that he had cheated on me with a junior employee from the marketing department. Her name was Monica. She was a year older than me, a senior from our school, and after graduation she joined the Cruz family company. When she entered the company, it happened to coincide with Augustine's and my wedding. So during my pregnancy, the two of them had already become involved. Naturally, there was no way to keep this hidden. The Cruz couple made their position clear immediately. Monica would never earn their approval, nor would she ever step through the doors of the Cruz family. Although Augustine had already taken control of most of the Cruz family's assets, he was still deeply wary of his parents. So after a fierce argument with the Cruz couple, he came to me with a proposal. In front of his parents, he would pretend that he had already broken up with Monica. Whenever he needed to see them, I would stay by his side and play the role of a loving wife. Apart from that, he would divorce me. I would still receive everything a wife was entitled to, except the marriage certificate. When it came to the divorce, he wanted custody of Anna, but Anna was the daughter I had nearly died bringing into this world. I knew that if she stayed by his side, a man who was blind in his heart like him might one day listen to Monica's words and mistreat my child. So that day, right in front of him, I slit my wrist and threatened him. Anna's custody had to remain with me. Divorce was possible, but Anna's custody was the one and only condition under which he could divorce me. At first, Augustine didn't believe I would really take things that far. But when I cut my wrist again, panic finally set in. He knew that if I died over this matter, Monica would not only be forever barred from the Cruz family, she herself might even be quietly dealt with by the enraged Cruz couple. In the Cruz family, there was no such thing as ordinary familial affection. Their relationship had already soured the moment I handed my shares over to Augustine, changing from family members into adversaries scheming against one another. And that change was entirely born of my own foolishness. I didn't want my involvement to cause the Cruz couple, in their old age, to sever ties with their only son. I agreed to his proposal, but in exchange, every time I accompanied him to appear in front of the Cruz couple, he had to pay me an appearance fee, $50,000 per time, and whether I showed up or not would depend entirely on my mood. That amount meant nothing to him financially. His anger came from the humiliation. As a high and mighty CEO, when had he ever had to lower himself and beg someone like this? Besides, even though he tried his best to avoid returning to the Cruz family's old residence, I still had to appear in front of his parents at least once a year, which meant that every year, he would have to come and humble himself before me. When Augustine heard my conditions, his expression shifted again and again, until only fury remained. Grace, what do you mean by this? After all these years, have you never had even a shred of feelings for me? Fine, if that's how it is. I won't give you a single cent. I'll wait for the day you come begging me. I laughed at him. Feelings? Why don't you ask yourself, if there were feelings, how did Monica come to exist? Don't tell me someone tied you up and Monica forced herself on you, and you helplessly fell in love with her. Say that kind of story to the old dog back home, even he wouldn't believe it. Augustine's face twitched a few times, but he didn't say a word. He simply stood up and walked out of the room. As he left, he slammed the door shut, and he meant what he said. After I left the Cruz family, I didn't see a single cent of so-called divorce compensation for 4 whole years. From that day on, I left the Cruz family. In those 4 years, I only saw him 4 times. He didn't know where we lived. Every time we met, it was only after I took Anna to a shopping mall and had him send someone to pick us up. Although there really was an income of 50,000 a year, it wasn't exactly destitute living, but Anna was still young, and there were many expenses to cover. I could only occasionally write manuscripts to supplement our household income. By budgeting carefully, our days managed to go on, barely. Chapter 5. Thinking about everything that had happened over the years, Augustine rubbed his temples irritably. What I said back then was just said in anger. After I returned to the company that day, I told Secretary Ava to transfer the compensation I promised you. He glanced around at the furnishings. You could tell a lot of care had gone into them, but that still couldn't hide the underlying poverty. Anna is my daughter. After all, how could I possibly let her live like this? I cut him off. But unfortunately, that's exactly what you did. Almost reflexively, he dialed Secretary Ava's number. Ava had been by Augustine's side for many years, even though, in his understanding, Augustine was already bankrupt. She still picked up the call immediately. Ava, the 50 million and the platinum apartment I told you to give Grace 6 years ago, did you personally deliver them to her? 50 million? If that money had really reached my hands, Anna wouldn't have had to suffer alongside me all these years. Ava fell silent for a moment before speaking. President Cruz, I signed the transfer documents in your name. Your assistant was responsible for the actual execution. As for what happened afterward, you'll need to ask Miss Monica. I knew it. The assistant who had been by Augustine's side back then was Monica. The moment that name surfaced again, a nameless fury I couldn't suppress surged up inside me. Monica, again her. She had already taken more than enough. Yet it still wasn't enough. She even had to lay her hands on what little belonged to me. Augustine and I sat there in silence. After he hung up the phone, he fell completely quiet. Just as the atmosphere was growing increasingly stiff, Anna came up to me holding a small plate. On it were several dumplings, misshapen and clumsily wrapped. She hadn't fallen asleep. Instead, while I wasn't paying attention, she had slipped into the kitchen and, in a flurry, wrapped a few dumplings herself. Mom, this is the first New Year Daddy is spending with us. Can you help me cook the dumplings I made for Daddy? I took the plate from Anna's hands and went into the kitchen with her. When the bowl of dumplings, with their fillings leaking out, was set in front of him, Augustine still stared fixedly at his phone. I knew who he was thinking about. In the past few years, because he had to return to the Cruz family's old residence with me the next day, he would always spend New Year's Eve finding ways to placate Monica. Anna looked at Augustine expectantly, then couldn't help turning her head and coughing a few times. Her health wasn't very good, simply because she had been born before reaching full term. When I was 6 or 7 months pregnant, Monica had already begun secretly posting photos of herself with Augustine in various places. At first, it was just a hand appearing in the corner of a frame, or some other insignificant detail. But very quickly, she grew bolder. When I was 9 months pregnant, I saw an intimate video of her and Augustine. My emotions were already unstable at the time. After seeing that video, anger rushed to my heart, and I went into premature labor. In the delivery room, I nearly didn't make it out alive. That was the first time Augustine ever yelled at Monica, but before he could even finish scolding her, her tears stopped his words. Augustine, I don't want to live in the dark. I want to be with you openly and honestly. While they were whispering sweet words to each other, I woke from my coma, lying there in the darkness, listening to their confessions. I felt doubly nauseated. All along, he had treated me as nothing more than a shield for Monica. Between him and me, there had long been nothing left but the purest form of a money transaction. After he finished the dumplings, I drove him out the door. You're bankrupt now, so you probably won't have money for the appearance fee tomorrow either. Go wherever you're supposed to go. Augustine wedged his foot in the doorway. But I have nowhere to go. I stomped hard on his foot. Instinctively, Augustine pulled it back. The door slammed shut in front of him. That's not my problem. Where's Monica? Isn't she the one you love most? Why don't you go to her? Augustine stood in front of the tightly closed door for a long time. The motion sensor light in the hallway flickered on and off. And in the end, he was left sitting alone in the darkness. In truth, he had already gone to look for Monica. Chapter 6. The moment the game began, Augustine headed straight for Monica's place. He thought that after treating her so well all these years, giving her whatever she wanted the moment she said a word, often twice over, there was no way her heart wouldn't soften. That kind of generosity was enough to melt even the hardest ice. Now that he had fallen on hard times, Monica had no reason not to help him. On the way to her place, he was even worrying about her, afraid that she might panic after hearing about his situation, that she might get flustered and hurt herself. He made up his mind, as long as Monica clearly stated that she would help him, that she was willing to sell off even a small portion of the gifts he had given her as capital for his comeback. He would repay her tenfold once he rose again. From the very beginning, this game had been entirely under his control. He could stop it at any moment. But the test that seemed so simple in Augustine's eyes, Monica failed the instant she saw him. When she opened the door and saw Augustine standing there dressed head to toe in cheap clothes, undisguised contempt flashed across her face. She blocked him outside the door. In her hand, the phone screen was still lit, displaying the group chat he shared with his friends. The Cruz couple were real heavyweights back in the day. How did they end up giving birth to something like Augustine, who practically burned through the Cruz family fortune in one go? Exactly. I just got word. The old Cruz couple sold off what little assets they had left at a bargain and ran overseas. Augustine's nothing but a stray dog now. Suddenly, another message popped up on the screen. Wait, Augustine's girlfriend is in this group too, right? Kick her out. Bad luck. Who knows? She might tip Augustine off. The very next second, the screen showed that Monica had been removed from the group chat. She didn't spare a single thought for the possibility that this was some kind of reversal Augustine had prepared. Years by his side had long convinced Monica that he was nothing more than a brainless ATM she could manipulate at will. Now that the ATM could no longer spit out money, there was no reason to stay. Rather than gambling her own money on Augustine's comeback, it was better to kick him while he was down and walk away with a fortune already in hand. Faced with Augustine's plea, Monica let out a scornful laugh. President Cruz, why exactly should I help you? Am I your wife? Did we ever get married? Her words crashed in Augustine's ears like thunder. It took him a long while before he spoke again, his voice trembling. Monica, weren't we planning to register our marriage next? Have you forgotten how good I was to you? Seeing how pathetic he looked, Monica stepped forward and mockingly patted his face. President Cruz, those were just gifts you gave me during a relationship. You were willing. I accepted. Don't try to play the feelings card now. Besides, a man who could abandon his wife and child without hesitation for a mistress, whose wife nearly died in the delivery room while he shamelessly flirted with someone else right next door, and now he's even gone bankrupt. How am I supposed to know what kind of miserable future I'd be walking into if I stayed by your side? Looking at Augustine, eyes bloodshot as if he wanted to tear her apart, Monica covered her mouth and let out a light laugh, then dialed security. They arrived quickly, because the residential complex Monica lived in was one Augustine had painstakingly selected back then. It was packed with security, chosen solely to protect her safety. But it was only when he was forcibly dragged out by them that Augustine realized just how foolish his past actions had been. Even after being thrown out onto the street, Monica's words continued to echo in his mind. Young Master Cruz, did you really think you were so charming that any woman would fall for you? To get close to you, I started studying everything about you back in college, every habit, every preference. How could anyone be a perfect lover? That so-called perfection was nothing more than careful calculation against someone who never saw it coming. Chapter 7. On a bench by the roadside late at night, Augustine sat there for a long time before finally making a phone call. Very soon, several sports cars pulled up in front of him. A few well-dressed young men stepped over, laughing and chatting. So, Brother Augustine, it's not that easy for a sister-in-law to pass this kind of test. What are you planning to give her this time? We'll definitely help you prepare it. They were smiling, but when they saw Augustine's expression, they quickly fell silent. After exchanging a few looks, one of them hesitated before speaking. Brother Augustine, did it not go well? If there's anything you need help with, just say the word, we'll do our best. Augustine turned his head and looked at the somewhat old building behind him. Let's go back first. The game is over. Chapter 8. Firecrackers echoed throughout the night during the holiday. In this city, aside from Anna, I had no relatives, so there was no need for me to get up early. I simply let Anna wake up naturally, eat breakfast, and only then planned to take her downstairs for a walk. Anna had a slight issue with her nose, but the air outside was now filled with the smell of sulfur. It was actually a good time to take her out for a stroll. When I opened the door, it felt as though something heavy was leaning against it. The moment the door opened, it started to fall inward. By the time I realized what it was, a hand had already braced the door. Anna pulled it open, revealing Augustine outside, still groggy with sleep. Beside him were piles of large and small bags. I instantly understood his intention, but before I could say anything, Anna had already rushed out and stood next to Augustine. "Daddy, are you here to spend the new year with me? Can we go take pictures today? I want a family photo. My classmates all say I'm a kid without a dad. I want to take a picture and tell them that I do have a dad, and that my dad is tall and handsome." I didn't want to have any further involvement with Augustine at all, but Anna wanted her father far too much. In the end, I could only let Augustine take her out to play wildly all day. At the photo studio, the photographer looked at us with a strained smile. "Ma'am, maybe you could stand a bit closer to this gentleman and smile a little more? Otherwise this photo really looks rather." Throughout the day, Augustine tried many times to strike up a conversation with me, but I didn't say a single word to him. Listening to the photographer, I tugged slightly at the corner of my mouth, about to say something, when I lowered my head and met Anna's eyes. I knew then that she truly wanted this photo. Taking a deep breath, I forced out a faint smile. It was stiff, but still much better than at the beginning. On the way home, Anna clutched that small photo frame tightly in her hands. In the frame, the two adults both looked as though they had thoughts of their own, while only the little girl holding her parents' hands was smiling brilliantly. After finally coaxing Anna to sleep, Augustine looked at me somewhat awkwardly, just like when we had first met. "Can Anna go spend some time with my parents tomorrow? As for that apartment, we need to go deal with it in person." I didn't want to be with him, let alone be alone with him, but the Cruz couple treated Anna very well. And besides, that apartment belonged to me. I had to take it back. Chapter 9. Early the next morning, a luxury car stopped downstairs at my place. Anna hopped familiarly into the back seat. The person who came was one of Augustine's close friends. Anna had seen him a few times before and more or less recognized him. After Anna was sent off, another car arrived. Augustine was just about to open the door for me when he saw me walking toward the nearby bus stop instead. His eyes darkened for a brief moment. Then, in the next second, he closed the car door and hurried after me. On the bus, I took a seat in the farthest corner. Augustine stood awkwardly by the door, fumbling with his phone. In the end, it was only with the help of an elderly aunt behind him that he managed to pay the fare. The price he paid was being lectured all the way by several elderly women. It wasn't until they got off the bus that he finally collapsed weakly into a seat. Seeing how badly he had fared, I couldn't help but feel amused. He said nothing. When we reached the stop, I got off the bus. Augustine followed behind me, holding up his phone. "Is this it? But this is still several kilometers away from Platinum Diamond Heights. Are we supposed to walk there?" I turned my head and finally spoke to him for the first time. "President Cruz, does this already feel hard to you? This is already quite good. At least there's a bus you can take. What I went through over the past 6 years was far harder than this. Now shut up and walk properly, unless you want to fall flat on your face in a moment." On the snowy streets, Augustine slipped countless times before finally making it to the door of that apartment. Someone was living inside, a pair of elderly couple whose features bore a striking resemblance to Monica. At least 7 parts out of 10. When they saw Augustine appear, they hurriedly grabbed his hand and sized him up with satisfaction, clearly pleased with the proud son-in-law their daughter had shown them photos of. But the frown on Augustine's face immediately made them flustered. Mr. Cruz, have you come today because something happened to Monica?" After a brief exchange, the elderly couple looked at each other. I didn't listen to the details of their conversation. Instead, I quietly examined the apartment that Augustine claimed belonged to me. From every angle, it could be considered top tier, located in a bustling area yet carrying a sense of serenity. Even the seams in the walls finished flawlessly. Many parts of the place were empty. Aside from the master bedroom, there was not a trace of daily life. It was obvious that although Monica had stolen this place to house her parents in their old age, she herself might never have set foot here. Whether that counted as filial or unfilial, I couldn't say. As I looked at this exceedingly valuable apartment, the painful memories of the past few years surged over me like a tide. When I had just left the Cruz family, I wandered the streets with Anna, penniless. My days at the shelter were the most desperate period of my life. On the second day at the shelter, I entrusted Anna to the staff there and went out alone. I borrowed a bit of money, rode the bus for a long time, and went to a dilapidated, unfinished building. It was a place where Augustine and I had once watched the stars together. Without his knowledge, I had hidden there the last gift my parents had given me. It was a gemstone brooch they gave me on my happiest birthday. I sold my final keepsake at a very low price, then took the money and brought Anna out of the shelter. In the days that followed, I searched everywhere for work, but how many people would be willing to hire someone with no work experience, who had to bring along a baby only a few months old to work? During that period, I witnessed hardships I had never once encountered while living in a greenhouse. All I could do was force myself to learn how to scrape by, begging people again and again to help watch over Anna, while I seized every spare minute to take on odd jobs, just to earn a little money. Numbers I had never cared about in the past became demons that crushed me over and over again. I had no one to rely on. I could only depend on the words I had written during idle moments in the past, revising them time and time again, submitting them again and again, hoping for a better outcome. Perhaps even heaven pitied my suffering. In the end, I did manage to walk down this path, one that allowed me to take care of Anna at home while still earning enough to sustain our lives. I will forever hate this suffering I never should have had to endure. But what I hate even more is myself, the foolish, ignorant version of me, who could only bury her head in love. A wave of dizziness hit me. I staggered a few steps, but still couldn't steady myself. Yet the moment I collapsed, two startled cries rang out in my ears. Miss, what's wrong with you? Old man, hurry, go get some sugar and hot water. Hurry! When I woke up, the elderly couple and Augustine were sitting by my side. A red booklet lay beside me. Seeing that I had regained consciousness, the elderly couple exchanged a look. In the end, they sighed and pushed the booklet toward me. Miss, President Cruz has already explained everything to us. When Monica let us move in here, she said this was a gift from President Cruz. When we saw that the property certificate had our names on it, we didn't doubt it. We never imagined it would cause you so much suffering. This house should be returned to you. The two of us have lived upright, honest lives. There's no reason for us to be 1 foot in the grave and still take advantage of something like this. As he spoke, Monica's father took out his phone and tried to dial a number. But no matter how many times he tried, it wouldn't connect. He could only sigh and give up. But just as Monica's father was about to say something more, the sound of a door opening came from outside. Monica hadn't even appeared yet when her voice reached our ears first. Hey, these days those two pieces of trash might tell you this house belongs to them. Don't believe a word they say. The house is mine, what's mine is mine, and no one can change that. Chapter 10. Is that so, Monica? That statement is a bit too absolute. Monica's father sprang to his feet in fury, forcefully dragging Monica in front of us. This is how we taught you, whatever you do, rely on yourself. Never cheat or steal. Did you listen? Look at what you've done now. You even embezzled someone else's child support. Are you even human? How did we end up raising a daughter like you? Even so, Monica merely let out a scornful laugh, sweeping her gaze over everyone present before finally fixing it on the property certificate beside me. So what if I took it? And what of it? I got it back with my own ability. You want to take it from me? Her eyes landed on all of us. A bankrupt piece of trash. A woman kicked out with nothing. Two useless old people who still have to rely on me to survive. With who I am now, all it takes is one finger and I can crush every single one of you. As she spoke, she walked over, snatched the property certificate from beside me, flipped through it casually, then flung it back in front of me. Look carefully. The name written here is mine, without my consent. What right do you have to take any of this? Then she sized up Augustine, who had been standing off to the side with his head lowered, silent the entire time. And you, President Cruz, who's already squandered every last bit of his worth? Augustine lifted his head to meet her gaze, his tone flat and calm. Monica, so this is who you really are. So all these years, what I gave up was a mountain of treasure, and what I fell in love with was nothing but ashes. Check your messages. This game should be over. A notification sound chimed on her phone. Monica discovered she had been added back into the group chat, the same one that had kicked her out not long ago. Monica, you really are a born actress. But this time, you lost far too completely. Looks like the things we prepared for Brother Augustine will have to be sold off cheap. After all, once they're tainted, we don't even want to touch them. As for those so-called things that belong to you, we have plenty of time to come and reclaim them one by one. And one last thing, we had people thoroughly investigate everything you handled since the day you joined the cruise group. You should know best what you did. The rest, you can slowly recall in prison. Monica's face drained of all color. She grabbed her bag and tried to leave. But Augustine moved faster, blocking the doorway. She stood in front of Augustine, staring at him. Gradually, she began to laugh, laughing until she bent over. After calming down, she sat back down on the sofa, then quickly stood up again, carefully surveying her surroundings. Monica was smart. From the information now laid out before her, she could easily piece together her future. Augustine, a bet is a bet. This time, I lost. As Monica was taken away, she passed by Augustine and let out a few low laughs. What a pity, President Cruz, you lost too. In this game, there are no survivors. Chapter 11. After we left that place, the Cruz couple quickly learned everything that had happened during that period. They brought Anna back from the old family estate. I met them only once before taking Anna and moving into that apartment. Augustine's gifts were delivered there like a steady stream. I accepted every single one without exception. He came once, seemingly wanting to say something, but the moment he saw me, not a single word came out. On Anna's birthday, the Cruz couple arrived with Augustine. Grace, we know there's no possibility for the two of you in this lifetime, but Anna is still your daughter. She deserves everything better. This is the share transfer agreement for the Cruz group. What's written here includes the shares we originally gave you, as well as 70% of what Augustine holds. Once this is signed, all of these shares will belong to Anna. As for what he originally promised you, we've added a bit more and placed it into a foundation. You and Anna will receive a monthly allowance from it. As for everything else, let Anna choose whatever she likes. I went through the documents carefully, line by line, before signing my name. Augustine looked at me, but said nothing. He knew that even if he spoke, it would only make the atmosphere uncomfortable and serve no other purpose. As they were leaving, I watched Augustine's retreating figure and finally spoke to him for the first time. Augustine, if Monica had been even a little bit smarter back then, none of this would have turned out this way, right? He stood there without speaking. After a long while, he turned back, then quickly turned away again, wiping the corner of his eye with his sleeve. Yes, Monica was right about one thing after all. This game had no survivors. Chapter 12. After returning to the old family estate, Augustine sat alone in his room for a long time, then stood up and paced back and forth again and again. In the end, his footsteps stopped in front of a room that had not been opened for many years. It was Grace's room from back then. He pushed the door open. Everything seemed unchanged, as if all the furnishings had been frozen in time, stuck at the moment when Grace loved him the most. He sat down at the desk. After a long while, he reached to the very bottom shelf of the bookcase beside him and took out a diary. He knew it. Grace's diary had always been kept there. This secret, Grace had told only him. When he opened it, there were many photographs inside. Most of them were of him. They were from that period of time when they were together, before scheming and calculation ever entered their lives. At the very end of the diary, he saw a single passage. Augustine, you bad thing, you finally stole a look at my diary. Since you've already read this far, answer me one question, okay? When you see this, do you still like Grace? We must have lived very happily together, right? In a daze, it felt as if he saw 18-year-old Grace standing beside him, smiling up at him. Her hair was a mess, the ponytail he had clumsily tied with trembling hands back then. A series of crisp sounds echoed through the empty room, and the girl with the ponytail seemed to curl her lips into a faint smile. So that's how it is. I understand now.